I never imagined how the strange laws of Vikings could turn into a story of unbelievable bravery. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. It felt like the ground beneath me was crumbling, leaving me to grasp at air. The chilling truth hit me like a wave of ice-cold water. 2 weeks ago, I was just a simple student, drowning in textbooks and dreams. Now, I was tangled in the veil of ancient customs, facing the dark courage of my ancestors. I remember the blood rushing through my veins, pounding like a war drum against my ribs. I could almost hear their distant whispers, echoing through time tales of fierce loyalty and oath-taking so powerful, they could ignite the wildest flames of honor and revenge. The world of the Vikings was no ordinary place. Turning down an old path, I stumbled upon a gathering. A circle of stern faces, bearded men clad in raw hides, their eyes glinted with the weight of duty. To defy the law is to invite chaos, one of them intoned solemnly, a flicker of firelight dancing in his gaze. I shivered. These laws weren't mere rules, they were shackles of fate, binding one to family and kin. But then, whispers of a blood feud ignited the night. I could feel the air thicken with betrayal. Someone had hunted down a warrior from the rival clan. Screams of the past mixed with the present, swirling in a tempest of anger. I was swept away in the storm, my heart racing as the clans grappled with decisions that could tip the scales of life and death. A moment of silence fell, heavy and tense. I could sense the fight in the air, like the calm before the hammer of Thor would strike. As I watched, one of them took a step forward, trembling hands gripping his axe. My pulse quickened. Would he turn the tide of this battle? Would he wield it with reason or rage? Just then, everything shifted again. A girl emerged from the shadows, her eyes ablaze with determination. Her voice sliced through the silence like a blade. No more bloodshed. She cried, her body trembling not with fear, but with conviction. I felt a spark ignite within me. But could one voice change the course of history? My breath caught. The wolves howled in the distance, and there I stood, caught between the fierce legacy of my ancestors and the hope of a possible peace. The future felt like a thread, stretching thin with every heartbeat, teetering on the brink of something monumental. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The air was electric, thick with anticipation as the girl's shout echoed into the night. Her plea hung there, a fragile thread against a storm of fury. I felt the weight of the moment crush my chest, an opportunity to reach across centuries and reshape a legacy. But the reaction from the men was immediate and fierce. What do you know of blood? One roared, his fists clenched like stone. You wield no axe and bear no scars of battle. Sit down, girl, before you drown in your folly. But her spirit didn't waver. I know of loss. She shouted back, her voice unwavering, portraying a keen understanding that seemed to resonate deeply within me. I know of longing for family and the ache it creates. This path leads to graves, not glory. I couldn't help but admire her courage. In so many ways, she was a real embodiment of the change that was needed. Yet I felt my heart constrict with despair. How could we fight against centuries of tradition? A flicker of doubt danced within me, mingling with the fire of hope she had ignited. After a charged moment, one of the elder men stepped forward, his grizzled face shadowed by uncertainty. We cannot forget, he sighed, his voice softening like the first light of dawn breaking the night. To forget is to dishonor those who have fought before us. But his eyes betrayed turmoil, torn between the ferocity of his clan's lineage and the peaceful resolve offered by this brave girl. As I observed, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was standing at the precipice of an unexpected journey. I had ventured into this deep legacy of the past unintentionally, but now the stakes felt terrifyingly personal. What if I could help them find a way through? What if my own bloodline and their ancient stories could intertwine, creating a tale of understanding rather than violence. A murmur began to ripple through the gathered men, uncertainty swelling like a tide against the rocks. She may be right. This feud grows old. Another voice drifted up from the fringes, accompanied by nods from the others. I looked around, stunned, as an inkling of hope bloomed in my chest. Perhaps, just perhaps, this girl's voice was finding allies. That in a moment of sheer impulsiveness, I stepped forward, the echo of her strength pushing me. If I may speak, elders, I began, barely able to hold back the tremors of my voice. We are here for reasons beyond our control. So many of our decisions are wrapped in the hardship of the past. But do we wish to bind our futures in the same chains? The crowd fell quiet. My heart thundered as all eyes turned toward me. Together, I continued, fueled by the faint but growing warmth of kinship and hope, we can rewrite this story. We can honor our ancestors without shackling our children to their vengeance. A new chapter could begin. Silence thickened like fog. Would they accept a path of healing? I dared to catch the girl's eye, and she smiled, a small, hopeful quirk of her lips that reminded me of the first light of dawn, promising warmth after a long, bitter night. Then, with an unexpected turn in the air, a piercing scream shattered the fragile unity we were weaving. No. It was a man from the rival clan, charging into our midst, eyes wild with fury. He brandished a weapon, seeking vengeance for the fallen. You dare conspire with your enemies? I will not let you betray the blood that runs through us. Fear raced through the crowd, panic rippling like a shockwave. Heads snapped towards the source of the voice, full of confusion and dread. The ancient laws demanded blood, and now it threatened to spill before our eyes. In that moment, my vision blurred, all hope seemed to dull into a chilling shade of reality. I had raised the stakes, bringing brave hearts and fragile souls to a precipice, only to have the scene shatter in an instant. There was no turning back now. We were all in this together, bound by fear and the chance of something greater. But would our bravery hold in the face of violence and chaos? The air hung heavy, charged with uncertainty, as confusion swirled, and the first strike loomed ominously in the shadows. Fear overtook my resolve, and with an unexpected twist of fate, I felt a response rise within me, a surge of inexplicable courage. But what would emerge from the impending clash? How many lives would hang in the balance when the dust finally settled? And, as the first blow fell, would the fractured bonds between past and present ever have a real chance to heal? In the instant before the chaos erupted, time seemed to slow, each breath drawn by fear resonating in my ears like a sickening drumbeat. I felt the pull of an ancient struggle, a manifestation of millennia of animosity collapsing within the confines of this one fateful night. Yet, amidst the encroaching darkness, that spark ignited in the girl's eyes kept my heart aflame. Stand firm, she cried, her voice ringing out unshakable and resolute against the tempest of fate. The anger of the approaching man lingered in the air like a firestorm, but her call for unity rooted us to the spot. I could barely see the faces of the men around me, a blur of resolve and fear, but the tension held us captive. Then, as if summoned by her bravery, something shimmered at the periphery of my vision. Old and weathered, a woman stepped out from the crowd, her silver hair catching the moonlight. She moved slowly, a tranquil presence in the face of impending violence. Haldora, she began, and her voice melted the heaviness around us. Do you not recall the price of vengeance? We have poured ourselves into this bitter well, and already its depths have claimed so many. The man wielding the weapon hesitated, confusion flickering across his face as he faltered. The glint of steel lowered a fraction. Shame on you for betraying our ancestors. He spat, still seething, yet under the weight of her steadiness, the rage thinned like fog under the morning sun. Shame lies not in seeking peace but in perpetuating hatred, Haldora replied, her voice gentle yet powerful, a balm on the fraying edges of our world. Have you not lost enough? Do you truly wish to only fill this earth with blood? A murmur spread through the crowd, an unexpected ripple of support. Old memories clashed with wounded pride, and for a brief moment, I felt reason seeping back into the hearts surrounding me, each person hanging on Haldora's words like lifelines. But then, amidst the budding hope, another figure emerged. From the opposite clan, a man bound in chains, stepped forth with fire in his eyes. Spare your breath, Haldora. You speak as if the blood unspilled can wash away our sins. They have slain our kin, and we owe them nothing but retribution. He pointed a bloodied finger at my companion and me. And you, traitors, how dare you weave a future with their cursed blood? You chime for peace whilst blood still stains the earth. The crowd rustled once more, hearts wavering with the burden of age-old grudges. My pulse quickened, each beat drumming louder uncertainty. I squeezed the girl's hand, grounding myself in her strength. As I caught her eye, our tangled hopes could have sparked 1,000 tomorrows. I willed my voice to break through the rising tide of anger, the desperation rushing forth unbidden. How much more blood? How many more families torn apart by these laws? I shouted, my words pouring out like a wellspring unleashed. In our desire for revenge, we forget the cost of our own humanity, the lives that could flourish, the laughter that could ring free amidst the ruins if only we dared to turn a new page. Gasps followed my declaration, paranoia coursing through the ranks as speculation ignited in their faces. Yet Haldora's presence empowered me, the wisdom etched onto her skin weaving strength through my voice. I turned my gaze back to the man with the weapon, seeing fear amidst the fury. You fight not just for lost ones, but for the ones still living among us. Do they deserve this cycle to continue? I implored, hoping to reach the frightened soul beneath the blade. Imagine a life unburdened by retribution just for a moment. Will you carry your grief into tomorrow, trapped within its cycle, or will you walk into the light of something new? The scene held its breath, a turbulent sea of souls balancing upon the knife's edge. An invitation hung in the air, charged with the possibility of redemption, or doom. I could feel the weight of every eye pressing upon my shoulders as I emerged as a voice of change, while the girl beside me stood as a beacon of conviction. Just then, as shadows shied away and rays of hope flickered, the man's hands trembled. Haldora stepped closer, her ancient wisdom framing our fragile alliance. She extended her hand, an invitation to lay down grievance and forge a path forward, backlit by the shimmering stars above. But, just as the tension began to stir into an inkling of resolution, a deafening roar erupted from the forest depths, a beast, one neither clan had seen for ages, racing towards us, a monstrous symbol of our intertwined fates. The storm had not yet passed. Lives teetered on the edge as darkness loomed, and once again, we were drawn into chaos. Would courage find a foothold amidst calamity, or would this new threat shatter our moment of fragile hope, devouring all in its wake? The creature burst from the shadows like a nightmare-given form, its silhouette dark and massive against the moonlight, a terrible amalgamation of claws, fangs, and brute strength. Fear erupted, an electric wave washing over the crowd, puncturing the fragile atmosphere that had begun to knit together in a semblance of hope. The villagers, who just a moment ago were considering a forged bond, instantly fractured again, panic triggering old instincts. Back! Back! Shouted the man holding the weapon, his earlier hesitance evaporating. He brandished his sword like a shield instead of a weapon. We must know. Haldora's voice cut through the air, a steady command that commanded the chaos to cease. We unite against this beast. It threatens us all. I felt the girl's grip tighten around my hand as we took a collective step back. The realization was visceral. We were not here simply to face each other anymore. We faced a foe that cared not for our blood ties or ancient grudges. In that moment, we were all Vikings, bound by something primal and instinctive, fighting not just for ourselves but for our very existence. The creature let out a menacing roar, echoing off the trees, the guttural sound vibrating through our bones, a call to the primal fear tucked away in our hearts. It surged forward, a whirlwind of fur and fury, clawing at the earth as it charged towards us. Hold your ground! Haldora shouted again, stepping boldly to the front. Our past has brought us here, but it is our choice that will allow us to survive. In the midst of screaming and sword clashing, I saw her light, an unwavering flame against the chaos. I took a deep breath, steadied my trembling body, and echoed her rallying cry, together. Fear was a dull roar in my ears, but I couldn't let it drown out my voice. It needed to rise above the clamor. If we fight as one, we can end this terror. Eyes locked on mine, at least a few from either clan hesitated, perhaps remembering why they had come so far this night. Not just hatred, but a longing for survival. It was a timeless struggle, a fight not against each other but against the darkness threatening every life here. With determination ignited anew, several warriors from both sides began to gather around Haldora and me, forming a link of solidarity. The trembling, fear-riddled body of the man who had earlier brandished his weapon next to me took a step forward, sword gripped tightly, the fire in his eyes now directed towards the beast. "Ready yourselves," he cried, and as if compelled by a powerful force of unity, we readied our arms against the terrifying creature now rushing towards us. The battle erupted with a raw intensity that coursed through the air like lightning. While some charged forth, others fell back, trying to find strategy amid the chaos. We deflected blows, arrows flying as a handful of archers joined our ranks, the cries of the brave mingling with the roars of the beast. The weight of fear transformed into a resolute fire, a testament that we were intertwined in this fight, and then, amid the clash and chaos, I caught sight of the girl. She fought valiantly, the fierce resolve glimmering in her movements as she parried with a dagger, striking where she could. My heart swelled with pride and terror in equal measure. With every swing, she was shedding not just the weight of the immediate battle, but the heavy bonds of conflict that had shackled her kin. Our kin, push forward. Haldora's voice rang out again, steadying the trembling resolve wavering within me. We could bridge our past resentments and forge a new narrative, but we had to step through this fire first. As the beast roared once more, unleashing havoc, I stumbled back, glancing at the girl, when suddenly, a blinding flash illuminated the night as a bolt of oppressive energy discharged from the beast's maw, almost like a demon's curse. Not all were ready for this attack. In an instant, I saw a shape move in front of me, throwing themselves into the fray, sacrificing themselves to save the ones behind. My mouth went dry. Among the figures, I barely recognized the man bound in chains leaping toward the creature with desperate bravery. "You will not take them," he screamed, forcing me to watch to witness a fate that threatened to rob us even of that flicker of unity. Time seemed to freeze as shadows consumed him, the beast crashing down. Despair clawed at my heart, joy crumbling in the next instant. Hope teetered on the knife's edge as the fear of loss blended with glimpses of unyielding courage. In that moment, a call surged within me, the weight of unanswered questions weaving through the blood-soaked air, and I was terrified that, after such bravery, the price we would pay, would it shatter what we sought to build? Or would it kindle the flame of change we desperately needed? As the cries echoed into the dark, the grotesque form of the beast preparing to strike again, the emotional scales hung precariously, leaving us prisoners in that suspenseful, harrowing heartbeat. The air crackled with tension, the pungent scent of iron and sweat all around me, as I stood frozen in disbelief. The brave soul who had leaped before the creature was gone, swallowed by the darkness without a trace, leaving a gaping void in my heart that I couldn't begin to comprehend. Instinctively, I looked to the girl, desperate to find solace in her presence. She was still fighting, her tenacity brightening the dark corners of despair that threatened to engulf us all. But doubt gnawed at me like a relentless beast of its own. Would this sacrifice come to symbolize the very end of our hopes for change? Or would it strengthen our resolve to honor that fallen warrior transcending our ancient frictions, uniting against a common enemy, Haldora? I called out, my voice strained amid the chaos. "What do we do?" Her gaze, sharp and unwavering, met mine. "We honor his bravery and give our all," she shouted back, her voice a clarion call rising above the battle. "Each life lost demands our fight to matter." With renewed determination coursing through my veins, I joined her again, alongside the gathering ranks of warriors. We stood shoulder to shoulder, battered and bruised, yet fierce in our newfound purpose. The creature growled low, and as it turned, its dreadful gaze swept over us, seeking out our fear like a predator scenting its prey, but instead of backing down, we held fast, challenging the eyes of the beast. This was a moment spun from the threads of vengeance and bravery, the kind that could heal wounds that ran deeper than blood. I locked eyes with the girl again, and as if she could sense the barrage of thoughts racing through me, she gave me a small, tight-lipped smile that felt as warm as the summer sun. A promise that we would push through together. A swift commotion erupted behind us as a new wave of fighters joined the fray, a cluster of old rivals from the other clan, drawn together by the sheer ferocity of the battle. A fierce rush of adrenaline surged through me, and I recalled their sentiments back on the shores as we'd battled mere differences in legacy. Now, we stood united, our shared humanity forged in desperation and defiance. The terrible creature lunged forward again, its claws raking the air, but this time, we were prepared. Together, I yelled, and the echoes of our unified battle cry merged with the sound of steel striking flesh, the punctures of arrows meeting their mark. In those precious moments, Amidst the cacophony of war, I spotted Haldora, guiding the efforts on the front lines, treading a path carved from strength and sacrifice. With every swing of her sword, she embodied hope, a flicker igniting those souls around her, challenging despair with fervent determination. I felt invigorated just by standing next to her, the energy of her will flowing into the very core of my being, yet, as we gained ground, the beast grew increasingly ruthless. Its movements became erratic, fear and desperation making it feral. I could feel it in my bones. It, too, was fighting for survival in a world that thrived on cycles of annihilation. For a moment, I recognized a strange kind of kinship with it, a reflection of our strife, how everything seemed to prey upon our fears, making monsters of us all. Then, in a swift, cruel turn, the creature unleashed another blast of corrosive energy, this time aimed directly toward Haldora. No! I screamed as time slowed, the world distorting around me. I lunged forward, trying hopelessly to reach her in time, but the acrid air crackling with energy felt thick, choking my movements. In a flash, she swung her sword, expertly deflecting the single beam aimed at her, but the shockwave of the collision knocked her to the ground. She landed harshly, weapons skidding away, and for a throbbing heartbeat, fear gripped my chest like a vice. I raced to her side as the world spun chaotic around me, feeling like each heartbeat could be my last. Haldora! Get up! I pleaded through gritted teeth, a panic rising that overshadowed my newfound sense of courageous unity. It'll be all right, she gasped, her words laced with grit but tinged with pain. Fight for them. The world spun on its axis as I heard her voice fade into the backdrop of chaos. My heart surged again, fueled by a mix of love and desperation. Their struggle mirrored ours, I recalled. That we faced loss not as a single fracture but as a collective wound that could heal only through shared resolve. But as I turned to battle again, something crashed nearby, an explosive force that left me momentarily disoriented. Dust clouded the air, and when it cleared, a revelation struck like a blow. Among the formation of enemies gathered against the beast lay an unmistakable figure, one draped in familiarity and shadows. It was the man in chains, alive and fighting alongside his former enemies, the very one who had offered himself as a sacrifice. What does this mean? My thoughts spiraled in sheer disbelief and confusion. Had the confines of our destiny shifted so dramatically? Had strength resonated behind a singular act of bravery? As I stood there, trying to comprehend this revelation, the creature prepared for another onslaught. The tides shifted once again, and I realized now more than ever that the fight was just beginning, our stories woven into each moment, chaotic but beautiful in their tremendous weight. Unforeseen alliances were on the verge of blossoming, and just as I was ready to engage all that heat within me, the ground trembled, and the heavens roared. The beast surged, no longer just a being of malice but a harbinger of a conflict spiraling into realms beyond our comprehension. The truth unfolded like an unfurling blossom. It was not just survival I sought, it was a chance to reforge our destinies into something greater, and in that pursuit, I stumbled once more into the treacherous embrace of fate, embarking on a path unpaved yet glimmering with endless possibility. I staggered back, my breath hitching in my throat as the sight of him sank into my bones. The man in chains, the very one who had launched himself into the gaping maw of darkness, was now fighting not just against the creature, but alongside former foes. The chaotic tendrils of uncertainty entwined around my mind, squeezing tight, leaving me questioning everything. How is this possible? The words escaped my lips, barely audible over the din of battle. It felt absurd to ponder the mysteries of fate when survival itself dangled over a precipice. But he fought valiantly, wielding remnants of a broken past, pushing against the dark tide with every ounce of strength he could muster. The admiration I felt for him complicated my emotions further. We had spent so long embroiled in the trivialities of pride and bloodlines, and here he was, tearing down walls that had kept us prisoners of our own histories. A deep growl erupted from the beast, echoing off the jagged rock formations surrounding us, and I shook off the weight of my thoughts. I wouldn't allow hesitation to steal my hold on hope. Together! I cried again, rallying my comrades, extending my battle-worn hand to those alongside me, encompassing both the familiar and the new. The air crackled as we surged forward, our connection to each other palpable, reminded of the immense humanity rooted in our struggle. The man in chains, whose name I still did not know, met my gaze with a mixture of determination and fear that mirrored my own. In that singular moment, we were not just warriors born of one bloodline or another. We were human beings riding the waves of fate together. Our spontaneous coalition fought fiercely, each thrust of each blade crafted from our pain, our passion, and our shared desire to rise above the wreckage of our history. Yet, amidst our desperate struggle, something avoided my grasp. Haldora lay on the ground, her voice growing weaker. I could see her struggle, her eyes pleading with me to continue the fight, to make this sacrifice mean something. Then, with a terrible roar, the creature unleashed another blast, sending debris flying in every direction. I ducked, dodging fragments that rained down, but casting my eyes back toward Haldora, my heart plummeted. She still lay there, weapon gone, struggling to rise. "Stay with us," I shouted, though my heart echoed with the fear that maybe this battle could demand more than we could afford to lose. "Go," she shouted back, every word laced with urgency. "You have to fight for them. This is our moment." It felt as though time suspended for the briefest breath, the battle's chaos receding like a tide pulled away, leaving only her resolute gaze and the truth of our impending sacrifice. I felt a fire ignite within me, unquenchable, fed by all the glimmers of hope and shared sacrifice in that moment. The future we sought depended on us. So, I turned to rally my brothers and sisters, the fighters who stood with me, each now transformed by newfound purpose. The man in chains was already drawing in the spirit of our combined fight, and I knew that a flicker of trust had begun to bind us all. In flickers of sidelong glances, I witnessed the veracity behind our determination, the way alliances began to shift, just as the creature's fierce assault lapsed again into the depths of madness. But just as we gained ground, a deafening howl erupted once more from the beast. The sky darkened with shadows as it rose to new heights, shifting the weight of our hope into something heavier. Suddenly, the world trembled around us, and cracks formed in the earth beneath our feet, racing outward like the veins of a dying beast. "Now!" I screamed, feeling adrenaline pulse through my every cell, blending with fear, urgency, and an unfettered desire to reclaim our futures. We surged forward as a wave, unyielding in our resolve to fight against the darkness, choosing to believe in the beauty of our humanity rather than the constraints imposed upon us by bloodlines. Then, amid the onslaught of chaos, a second revelation struck. I glimpsed behind the creature another figure. Was emerging from the shadows, cloaked, unrecognizable, yet a palpable tension vibrating in the air signaled its importance. "Stand firm," I cried, but deep down, apprehension curled within me like smoke, threatening to choke the unwavering resolve in my heart. The fight was far from over. It lingered tantalizingly on the cusp of something profound but fraught with uncertainty, teetering at the edge of revelation. In that fleeting moment of terror, I grasped the reality of our circumstances. The battle we were waging was not merely one of survival, it was the genesis of change, a rare chance to overhaul centuries of enmity and division. But even as hope ignited like wildfire among us, a nagging dread simmered beneath, a reminder that the path towards something greater demands grave sacrifices, and as the shadows thickened around the creature's growing form, I felt an unsettling dread settle like a dark cloak across my shoulders. What if the truth behind our fight was far darker than we imagined? What if we were only playing into the hands of forces we had yet to understand? The chilling thought cut through the chaotic din, sharpening my awareness, and just as I resolved to push through, the ground trembled once more, and the atmosphere crackled with a foreboding energy. As the new figure emerged within the darkness, I knew that the compass of our battle had shifted once again, plunging us deeper into the unknown, where every heartbeat echoed with the promise of both unprecedented alliances and unimaginable perils. The figure stepped forward, a silhouette carved from shadows and energy, each advance pulling a cloak of night closer. My heart raced, the air around us charged with an unsettling mixture of anticipation and dread. Fear clawed at my insides as I watched, lips parting in disbelief. This new arrival could be the savior we sought or the instrument of our doom. The beast stirred, its attention shifting entirely to the cloaked figure, as if drawn by an unbreakable tether. For a moment, it hesitated, enabling a flicker of hope to break through the chaos that enveloped us. I could feel the weight of the fight pulling at my limbs, but my spirit began to rise. This unknown presence could tip the balance. Do you see it? I called out to my comrades, a sudden conviction igniting the words. This might be the ally we need. But as I lifted my chin, skepticism hung in the air. My brothers and sisters exchanged cautious glances, a silenced debate spiraling within their eyes. How could we trust someone emerging from such shadows, when unity had always had its roots in blood, in the histories that defined us? The chains binding the man, one who fought alongside us, clinked softly as he stepped forward, hesitantly at first, and then with renewed vigor. The raw defiance radiating from him was palpable, and suddenly something about the shadowed figure felt familiar, though I couldn't place it. But the recognition lit a fire of hope deep within me, leaving an ember of possibility lingering, something worth fighting for amid adversities rising like spikes from our shared past. Yet Haldora, I glanced back once more to her prone figure. Time seemed to stretch and shatter as emotion held me captive, winding tighter than the chains that bound our ally. Every part of me screamed to rush to her side, to safeguard her against the encroaching void, but I couldn't abandon the fight. The cruel notion grabbed hold: what if this was my last chance to salvage not only our future but hers? Hold the line, I shouted, feeling the simmering energy in my voice, drawing together the fragments of courage from our band. The urgency mustered through words resonated with raw determination, and we rallied again, but it was not without trepidation. Fear was festering just beneath the surface, threatening to spill over. As we pressed on against the beast, I glanced up, staring at the figure now standing before the creature, an unbroken silhouette of defiance. From the depths of the shadow emerged a voice that struck like a bell tolling through the storm, a voice that reverberated with a familiar cadence, drenched in a mix of reputation and lineage. I have returned. It echoed. Not as an enemy, but to reclaim what was lost. A terror-stricken gasp escaped from among my comrades. I couldn't breathe, the recognition fractured my thoughts. This voice belonged to Eirik, one whom many believed had disappeared into the dark void, leaving the past unraveling in his absence. Eirik, the son of our last king, someone viewed with both reverence and horror. How he escaped the abyss was a mystery, but the chaos of recognition hurled an icy grip around me. He should be dead, cried one of the warriors beside me, disbelief flooding over his features. The man in chains locked eyes with Eirik, and in that instant, something unspoken passed between them, not quite trust, but an understanding born out of shared history and pain. The creature reared back, sensing the tension ripe in the air, and it roared, a sound so ancient and terrible that it plucked at the strings of primal fear within us. Yet it was more than just an expression of anger. It matched the pulse of lost generations' rising terror, wanting to reclaim dominion over those who had dared to defy it. And that moment, the shadow realm shifted like sands beneath us, bringing forth a sense of urgency. The two forces, light and dark, collided. A delicate equilibrium hung in the fringes, but even as we rallied together, I felt an inexplicable churn within me, a deep unease that whispered cautious truths into my core. And just as the creature lunged again, claws poised for attack, I witnessed Eirik's hand extend, glowing with an ethereal light, a palm facing the darkness, a shield against the wicked doubt clawing at the horizon. "We are not what you made us," he cried, fury and fidelity woven through every word, resonating across the ground we battled on. But in the depths of that confrontation, a sudden crack reverberated from the earth, preventing a division but quelling my heart. I turned back to Haldora, only to find the ground sinking beneath her as an ominous chasm opened up, dark tendrils of despair creeping toward her. The unease morphed under its weight, morphing hope into panic as I realized she lay too close to the edge. No. I shouted, a primal scream bursting forth as I dashed back to her, the impending wall of shadows cascading deep and dark behind me. The fight, the emotion, the desire to change our fate felt futile against this growing cruelty, but something held me back, a salute of my comrades demanding I stay. From somewhere deep inside the weight of my heart, I recognized the sacrificial choice hovering close: liberation, pain, destiny, and love all coalescing. Cowled, I really risk everything? As I stood there at the precipice of the chasm, bleeding hope into the soil of despair, the realization of sacrifice twisted beneath the weight of what we might lose loomed sinister and profound, leaving me paralyzed. I knew we were bound to our choices as shadows shifted, and choices would haunt the echoes of our actions tonight. In that moment, the chasm widened beneath Haldora, drawing her closer to the depths. Time shattered into frantic fragments, and a question sketched across my heart: could I truly save her, or would I be forced to watch as everything I loved descended into an eternal abyss? The answer hung in the air, dancing with danger. The fight had only begun, and uncertainty lay like a shroud around us all. The atmosphere crackled with palpable fear as Haldora teetered on the edge of darkness, innocence neared destruction, and yet amidst the cacophony, a flicker of clarity broke through my turmoil. The ground trembled beneath me, its violent quaking mirroring the tempest waging inside my heart. Every pulse of desperation urged me to leap into the void, to save her from the damned fate that loomed just beyond her reach, yet, even as I considered the danger, another scream of anguish erupted from the fray. Through the confusion, I spotted one of my comrades, the fierce warrior, locked in a battle with the creature. His face was twisted in fury, yet beneath that rage, I saw the glimmer of fear for those he had sworn to protect. He fought valiantly, fists and steel clashing against ancient claws, but he too faced the gnawing weight of pestilence. The creature's power seemed to drain the very essence from all of us. With dawn threatened by the tide of night, I took a trembling breath. "Kale! Hold your ground!" I shouted, though my own voice faltered under the strain. As if echoing my plea, a small burst of light flared from Irik's hand, a beacon of defiance shining against the gathering shadows. It pulsated in rhythmic waves, each beat an affirmation of resilience. But Haldora, precious and vulnerable, worried me beyond anything. I had lost so many to unease and uncertainty. It was a haunting refrain I wished to silence. I could not stand by. The weight of inaction became unbearable. It siphoned strength and built walls around hope I feared would soon collapse. "Irik!" I called to the figure now so imbued with grave purpose. "Can you help her?" Irik turned his gaze towards me, and for a fleeting moment, I caught the shimmer of pain etched across his features, the unhealed scars of betrayal still fresh, perhaps. "I need strength. We fight as one, or we fall as countless shards to this darkness." His voice commanded respect, resonating deep within me and urging forth the unity we had desperately needed since this night first turned grim. That I felt a connection surge through me. The knowledge that we were not alone, that together we would become the foundation upon which our fates were built, bolstered my resolve. Glancing back at Haldora, I felt the urge to push past the chains of my fear. Yet, in her final glance toward me, I saw the understanding tucked behind her eyes, the desperate hope told through the silence blooming between our weary spirits. She could sense the chasm pulling at her quicker, dragging her closer to the abyss. "We need more light." I shouted again, the clarity of thought sharpening the fear coiling deep in my core. It was not enough that we stand separated by our distrust. I realized then that we needed to bridge the chasms of our shared pain, however vast. With the pulse of Irik's energy guiding us, I felt tethered to a larger purpose. We needed to rally, to forge together whatever remained of our broken spirits. In that precarious moment, something inside me shifted. I dashed back towards my comrades, their struggles bringing static energy into the air, a crackle of unyielding spirit. I began to chant, a rhythm igniting our hearts, a litany of resilience. "We are warriors. We are kin. Shadows can't break us, together we win." The words echoed in the trembling earth as if my voice infused our resolve with strength. The others joined in, voices intertwining to form a growing wave of defiance against despair. I sensed our energy intertwining, encircling the shadowed figure of Irik, and a light began to radiate from him, reflecting our shared fury and apprehension. It became a storm of strength, vibrant and fierce, illuminating the corners of the abyss threatening to consume Haldora. I glanced back. We had come together, a storm of unity against chaos thriving around us. Among the hands reaching out in solidarity, Kale found his strength renewed as he fought like a lion against the creature that consumed him just a moment ago. With hope woven into every rise of our voices, we continued to chant, reverberating through the conflict. However, somewhere deep within me, I felt a chill of apprehension crawl through the back of my mind. The shadows shifted, still claiming ground as they wove a narrative all their own, one not wholly kind to mortals. What if our efforts were in vain? What if we succumbed to despair, forever lost to the deep? Yet, just as the emotional weight threatened to entrap my heart, something unexpected unfolded. The incredible light Irik emanated grew brighter, feeding off our collective resolve. The creature paused, a shudder coursing through its body as the darkness was pushed back, if only for a moment. "Together. Carry your light." Irik's voice transcended the turmoil, carrying us onward. But then, just as I felt the tide shift, a chilling roar broke through, echoing with primal fury. The shadows shrieked in outrage, the very air quaking as the ground beneath Haldora shuddered violently, reopening wider. I felt the pull of darkness beneath her, one that promised despair. Our voices faltered as the shadows clawed at the edges of our hearts, hungry for our fear. I turned, horrified, catching a glimpse of Haldora now teetering far too close to the bottomless pit. An icy dread gripped my chest tighter than any chains, paralyzing me again, not from the beast, but from the knowledge that a single spark was all it would take for everything to extinguish once and for all. Irik's radiant light flickered under the weight of the creature's wrath, chaos spiraling around us. Desperation claimed the air, and I realized anew a final choice steered us toward redemption or ruin. That very choice now coursed through my veins, anchoring the burden of sacrifice against the bitter taste of uncertainty. Would I leap into the edge of the darkness to save her, or offer everything to ensure our unity would prevail beyond this very moment? Before I could apprehend the answer, the abyss yawned wide, the darkness beckoning Haldora's descent, as if it hungered for the last shred of hope that connected us. And there, on the brink of losing her forever, the truth struck like a thunderclap. Our story was not merely a tale of shadows and warriors, it was woven with love, sacrifice, and the unyielding cords of fate. As the chasm beckoned, I stood poised on that thin line, torn between two worlds, cradling the weight of decisions that would forge a legacy within the growing tumult. The ground shook violently as I shouted once more, my heart colliding against reason, Haldora. But what awaited in the shadow would be a revelation that would challenge everything I ever believed. The world spun dangerously as I fought against the growing darkness that had wrapped itself around Haldora like a suffocating shroud. Time had become an elusive entity, each second felt like a lifetime stretched on the taut cord of my anxious breath. The chants we had woven lost their rhythm, stifled by the sound of Haldora's desperate gasps, each one breaking sharper than the last. It was as if the very fabric of our unity began to unravel, consumed by the abyss that taunted us all. At that moment, when I felt the threads of our combined strength waver, an unexpected voice cut through the chaos, the gentle whisper of Lyra, the healer, born from a heart she had long guarded, timid yet undeterred by circumstance. "Remember your love," she urged, her eyes shimmering with an echo of past warmth. "It is love that will guide you through the darkness." Her words wrapped around me like a lifebuoy thrown into a raging torrent, a small yet steady flame flickering against the overwhelming night. Love. It resonated deeply within me, igniting embers of resolve that threatened to sputter out. In the heart of despair, love stood unyielding, a light that transcended shadows, anchoring us, reminding us of who we were, of the bonds that had forged our fight. With renewed conviction, I turned once more to Haldora, seeking that luminous spark embedded within her. "I love you," I called out, my voice breaking but unwavering. "Hold on." I saw her eyes widen, flickers of recognition and hope flashing beneath the surface of her fear. It was a moment suspended in eternity, one that would imprint itself within our very souls. In that flash of connection, something deep within me stirred, a force greater than mere courage. It was a powerful liaison, a manifestation of all our shared laughter, tears, and quiet moments together that had crafted our existence. With each breath, I gathered the essence of every exchanged glance, the warmth of gentle touches, and the battles fought side by side. All of it fanned the flame of resilience, emboldening me to act the embodiment of what we had built together over so many hardships. The air thickened with tension, rippling before us, a barrier that pulsated as the creature roared in furious response to my proclamation. Shadows writhed and danced at its command, hungry for that flicker of genuine vulnerability. But amidst the terror, Lyra stood steadfast, her hands weaving tendrils of healing energy into the air, forming a web of protection. Irik, bolstered by that surge of love lingering in the atmosphere, strengthened the light around us, pushing back against the foul claws reaching toward Haldora. In this chaos, I felt something fragile yet beautiful emerge. It was the bond we shared, one that transcended simple cooperation in battle. It grounded us. I felt each hand, calloused but resolute, connecting in a tapestry of solidarity. We had a communal purpose beyond survival. We yearned for unity and hope amidst encroaching despair, but even as we rose, the abyss retaliated with a ferocity that threatened to rend us apart. The shadows coalesced, forming monstrous shapes that lunged toward our fragile nets of light. I clenched my fists tighter against the unfurling dread, my heart pounding fiercely. We moved together, defending one another against the darkness that clawed at our very souls. As I stumbled forward, watching the heart-wrenching sight of Haldora, I realized something so profound, so exhilarating but terrifying. It was not merely her life at stake, it was the essence of our bonds and our very existence as a tapestry woven through time. Fight. I roared, the emotions erupting forth from my very core. For her, for us. Remember the light within unite. Irik's eyes flared brighter as he drew from our collective desperation and love, pushing back the shadows that clamored hungrily. A brilliant beam shot up into the darkness, enveloping Haldora momentarily, a golden shield of hope illuminating her face. But just as it did, the creature staggered, its eyes locking onto me. A predatory glint filled its gaze, and I felt an unseen force pulling me closer, still a desire for that very light of love and connection we were striving so hard to protect. Fury ignited within me, mingled with fear. Don't let go. I cried to my comrades, the voices of desperation echoing back to me, fired anew. Our chant burst forth once more, a wild conflagration of power rising like a tempest around us, and yet that terrible howl reverberated through our formation, chilling our spirits. As the shadows contorted, I felt a stinging pressure ache behind my eyes. It whispered of an unimaginable sacrifice, a price to be claimed. Stand firm. Kale bellowed alongside me, but even his voice hesitated. Shadows crawled closer, wrapping around us with serpentine grace, squeezing tighter against our resolve, and then, in an instant that shattered the heart of our defiance, the ground cracked, fissures opening wide, leaving me breathless. Without warning, the tendrils of darkness surged forward, and I saw Haldora letting go of the stone ledge, teetering on the edge of oblivion. Time slowed as I lunged forward, my body propelled by raw instinct and love. Haldora. I screamed, my heart demanding to bridge the distance between us. But as I reached out, the shadows shifted again, and I felt the icy grip of dread crawl up my spine. The world conspired against us, the very foundation quaking underfoot, and just as I grasped for her hand, as our fingers brushed the very precipice between hope and despair, a blinding flash erupted, and the darkness roared, its fury unleashed in all-consuming chaos. In that moment, a terror washed over me, not just the fear of loss, but a soul-wrenching revelation. What if this was destined? I thought, but as the shadows consumed the light, leaving behind an unsettling silence, I realized that the darkness would not settle for anything less than our unraveling to devour everything we had ever known. The last echo of Haldora's face swirled in my mind, filled with both determination and sorrow as she vanished into the churning void. Despair claimed me in torrents as the grasping specters pressed against us, and I was left standing at the edge of existence, torn between love and the possibility of forever being lost. The darkness receded for a moment, like the breath after a storm, and I sank to my knees, raw and trembling, engulfed by loss. The fierce bonds we forged in this short span of time now lay wrecked, scattered like ashes in the face of adversity. But even in that devastating moment, I could feel the threads of our collective struggle still whispering around me, flickering with the promise of hope. As my heart throbbed with despair, I looked around at those who weren't lost, those still fighting against the remnants of the creature's rage, and it ignited something deep within me. Haldora was gone, yes, but her spirit, her fierce desire for peace, and the light she shared were not extinguished. I could feel them nestled in the souls of everyone standing against the darkness, a shared understanding that grew heavier with every heartbeat. The man in chains, Irik, drew closer to the center of our formation, a resolve flickering in his gaze. His chin raised defiantly against the overwhelming shadows, and I recognized that we could still triumph through the trials we had borne together. I was not alone, we were a tapestry, intricate and beautiful, threaded with shared courage. I battled against the weight in my chest, forcing myself back to my feet, and met the gazes of my allies around me, warriors of two clans intertwined against an unseen threat. I raised my sword high, the sunlight reflecting off its blade. The light had returned. Remember why we fight. I shouted, my voice a determined roar resonating through the chaos. Remember Haldora. Remember those we lost in this battle. Each name flooded my mind, every sacrifice a beacon of the future we could still shape. Remember love. A hushed echo trailed from behind me as Lyra stepped into the fray, her arms glowing with a healing aura. Remember that love binds us beyond the blood. Love knows no feud. The echoes of our shared truths rumbled like thunder, gathering strength as more voices joined in. The very ground felt alive, vibrating under the rhythm of our chants, awakening the power that surged through us. Together, we cried, the word hanging in the air, an unbreakable thread woven through our vulnerability and will. The shadows writhed, recoiling from the strength that began to pour forth from us, clashing adamantly with the darkness that wished to envelop. Eirik grasped the moment, rallying our fading forces. We stand not just as warriors but as a family. We refuse to be fractures of our past. The light from his fingertips dimmed, but we rallied behind him, a wildfire spread through our resilience and conviction. We fought not for revenge, but to reclaim our right to coexist and honor those we loved. Then, amid the swelling momentum, the beast reared into view, a knot of blackness and fear. But instead of fear, I felt determination swell within me. The beast roared, its breath hot and rancid, but now I saw it without the lens of a monster. It was a creature of despair, and behind its fury lay a reflection of all that we had stood against, a product of our centuries-old feud that we face ourselves. I shouted, the realization bursting from my chest like a geyser, sending shockwaves of truth across the battleground. It's time to break this cycle. We can choose to face our past and turn the darkness into light. Eirik caught my eye, and in that moment, I felt us become more than warriors, bridged warriors and leaders, united as one against the shadows that threatened our existence. We rushed forward as one entity, a ferocious tide of humanity that I felt the surge of light washing through us, streaming from Eirik and Lyra, pulsating with the warmth of our collective love. Together, we dove into the fray. Heavily armed and emboldened, we met the dark creature not with hate, but with our shared belief in preserving life and peace. The battle dwindled in vibration as strikes met flesh, and we pushed not just because we were together, but because we were committed hearts in unison, fueled by love's intricate architecture. The tide of our emotional strength rolled forth, sweeping away the anger and resentment, evolving our history into something glorious, something new. It was then, just as we felt that triumph beginning to dawn, a flash of light erupted. The shadows were driven outward, and in the haze of fray, I caught a glimpse amidst the surging energy. A shimmering figure, Haldora. She emerged from the remnants of shadow, her spirit transformed, pouring grace into the battlefield. I am here, she whispered, radiating warmth. You have honored my fight. You have honored who we are and who we can become. In that flicker of eternity, I felt the ache of possibility wash over my pain, memory, and hope ignited within my spirit. Everything we had longed for could be ours if we chose connection over division, love over hate. The darkness shivered as if sensing its impending demise. The creature roared again, but it was met with the force of our collective love, ringing louder as we pushed it back. It screamed and writhed, defeated by unity's shining force, echoing stronger than all the old legends, louder than the clashing of swords and lost memories. Together, we roared, and in that moment, the shadows broke apart, fracturing onto the earth like shattered glass. A new dawn spreading across the skies. As the monstrous form dissolved into particles, leaving behind the ruins of what once was, I stood there, drenched in a sense of profound serenity. The air cleared, revealing glimmers of sunlight piercing through the chaos of night, the first note of a harmonious future. Haldora's spirit hovered before us, ethereal and vivid. You have chosen love. She called, her voice intertwining with the gentle breeze. And in that choice lies power. Honor it forever. Tears filled my eyes, unabashed, as the reality dawned that this journey, this incredible struggle had led me to something real, something profound. The responsibility to patch together the future rested upon us, no longer fettered by chains of blood or vow. We had chosen acceptance, and as the shadows faded, so too did the burdens of our past. The light grew brighter, illuminating every face of my companions as we shared a collective bray, the realization that bonded us transcendently. From this day forward, we would be remembered not for our feuds but for the strength we found in unity and love. The echoes of our cries, our sacrifices, and our triumph would ripple through time. In this moment, as dawn broke over a new world, I finally understood. To remember love will always be the bravest thing we can do.